So for those of you that are new, I would like to apologize in advance. You're not getting the best of us today. It's usually by Phil Baber, who's our minister, a phenomenal speaker in comparison. So I'm going to do my best to fill his shoes while he gets his summer break and is off doing sermons in other places. But I do appreciate and thank all of you for giving me the opportunity again to stand before you. So I must not have done too bad the first time. So when David Keel asked me for the title of my sermon, and it's usually during the week when I'm running through airports or sitting in meetings, I told him, I said, oh, I don't know. I said, let's go with the Hades business. And immediately I got an email back that said, are you sure? And I said, don't worry, it's okay, it's okay. It's named after one of my favorite authors, Best Works. And so he seemed to be okay with it, and it's what we ran with. So the author that inspired this discussion is a gentleman by the name of Terry Pratchett. Some of you may remember my mention of him during Joys and Sorrows about 5 months ago when he passed away. So his work is, without a doubt, one of the most influential authors in my life. His works in many ways were foundational to my identifying as a UU. In his worlds, the way people believe is explored in depth. The worlds he creates are amazing. Why certain aspects of creation are commonly accepted and how they are commonly completely misrepresented by humans is also in detail analyzed throughout all of his works. His works had me looking at my own beliefs and saying, why do you feel you have any qualifications for making these judgments and putting these stakes in the ground? Have you ever considered you just might be wrong? So the work in question is his very first published work, and if you happen to go to the bookstore, if you want to read more about this guy, I would recommend it to anybody. But shortly after his passing, his family and all of his friends and coworkers collected this series of his short stories. And thankfully they opened it with this story that we're reading today or talking about today. It was his very first work that was ever published that got him to become an author. So what's very, very incredible about the fact that it's his first work is he wrote it when he was 13, which still to this day blows my mind. I have read this story. It's about 14 pages long. I contemplated reading the whole thing to you guys today, but then thought, I probably don't have time for that. But I will recommend that you read it. I read it every week. I love it. It's every single time I read it, there's a little nugget of just one little tweak or tune that I didn't catch the last time, and it's brilliant. And then I think, oh my gosh, it's like my son wrote this, and it's amazing. It's truly amazing. So it's been kind of an eye-opener for me that he truly was a prophet of our times and gifted well beyond his years. The story that will eventually, hopefully, lead us to the points that I want to leave you with today begins with a character named Crucible. Side note, this whole sermon is spoilers, so I apologize in advance, but if I don't lay the premise, you're never going to get why I chose this title or why we're going down this path. So you could still read it. I didn't go verbatim. There's a lot of more hidden gems for you to absorb and enjoy yourself, but it's going to be heavily spoilers, so I apologize. So anyway, Crucible is the head of a very successful marketing firm. And he comes to his office one day, and waiting for him inside is the nemesis himself, or as he asks to be referred to, Nicholas Lucifer. Mr. Lucifer has a proposition for Crucible. He wants Crucible to help him advertise hell. The backstory for this is quite brilliant and an example of how Terry Pratchett helped me question most of my teachings from youth. It seems that hell has become a very lonely place. No one has come down in about 2,000 years other than, and I quote, one raving nit named Dante, but he went away with quite the wrong impression. He now wants Crucible to help, and I quote, make the public conscious hell-wise, not for eternal damnation, of course, just for day trips, etc., grand tour of hell and all that. So another thing to note is Terry Pratchett is English, so many of his English, even the Hades business is almost kind of like, oh yeah, that Hades business in our vernacular, which is also a tweak on all of this, but part of his sense of humor. So Crucible is, quite understandably, shaken by the proposition, but determines that he certainly doesn't want to anger the devil himself. So he agrees to come take a tour of hell firsthand and to begin the process of helping Mr. Lucifer brand his domain to drive tourism. As Crucible thinks about the mess he's gotten himself into, he begins to think mostly about what it would mean to have someone like Mr. Lucifer running around on the earth, being able to know everyone's deepest secrets, including his own. It's this motivation that drives him to seek a plan to make himself safe. Now, the next portion of the story is the first tour of hell for Crucible. He is shocked to find it completely empty, because no one has come down in 2,000 plus years, and all the existing souls worked their way up to purgatory and thence to, well, they got jobs elsewhere. It's completely empty. It ends with the two of them sitting down in Mr. Lucifer's office and drawing up plans for the renovation of the place and all the things that will draw humans in to come visit. For example, the sulfur plane, Crucible immediately turns to the Acme Mining Corporation and said they'd love to have the rights to mine those. They decide to build coffee bars, dance halls, race tracks. They decide to build fun fairs, restaurants, ice cream stalls, all-night jazz bands. So the next step for them, once they've got the design, is to bring hell into the public eye. Mr. Lucifer makes multiple public appearances and creates quite a disruption in the known world. One hilarious example that I thought is the fact that the lawsuit brought on by a famous brewery for loss of custom due to most of their customers signing the sobriety pledge after seeing him. The story continues on painting a picture of the newfound popularity of Mr. Lucifer and the fame that begins to follow him. Soon enough, he has his very own played-out entourage of disgruntled backbenchers, would-be starlets, bored reporters, and of course, the usual fatigue party of guards. Parties ensue. The transformation of hell into a tourist attraction is, of course, quite successful. The growth of hell's popularity only equaled the growth of the devil's bank account. The next bit is actually directly from the story, as I think it's important for garnering understanding of how it ends. So I'm going to read the last page and a half-ish of the actual story to you. The storm raged. For the last month, the northern hemisphere has been beset by thunderstorms unequaled in the records of mankind. The weathermen spent all their working days testing their corn, seaweed, and other oracles, but had to confess themselves at a loss. In the large study of his new country home, Crucible threw another log on the fire and settled himself deeper into his armchair. The storm continued. His conscience, perforce the most robust and untroubled in Europe, was troubling him. Something was wrong with this Hades business. Certainly not on the monetary side, for his commission over the last 3 weeks had been exceedingly generous, as his country house, 2 cars, 5 racehorses, and 1 yacht plainly stated. Hell had been a great success. The top people were going to flock there, and it had had the approval of the establishment. But something was wrong, something to do with those heavy storms. Somewhere in his mind, the inner Crucible, equipped with wings, halo, and a harp, was bouncing up and down on Crucible's conscience. The thunder murmured. Poof! The devil appeared, looking very agitated, and ran to Crucible's cocktail cabinet. He poured himself a belladonna and whirled round to Crucible. I can't stand any more of it, he screamed. His hand was shaking. More of what? Your lot. They've turned my house into bedlam. Noise, noise, noise. I can't get a good night's rest. Do you realize I haven't slept for over 2 weeks? Nothing but yelling One moment. You say they disturb you? Very funny. Why not close hell for a while and take a holiday? I've tried. Heaven knows. Rumble, rumble, rumble. I've tried. Will they leave? No. A bunch of thugs threatened to get me if I tried to close their noisy, blaring paradise. Rumble, rumble, rumble. I can't move without being mobbed by savage hordes of autograph hunters. I'm famous. I can't get a bit of peace. It's hell down there. The devil was now kneeling on the floor, tears streaming down his face. You've got to help me. Hide me. Do something. Oh God, I wish. The thunder split the heavens in twain. The sky echoed and re-echoed with the sound. Crucible slumped in his chair, his hands clapped over his bursting eardrums. And then there was silence. The devil lay in the middle of the floor, surrounded by light. Then the thunder spoke. I'm going to go ahead and act this out for you. Do you wish to return? Oh, yes, sir, please. I'm sorry. I apologize for everything. I'm sorry about that apple. Truly, I am. On the bookshelf, a bust of Charles Darwin shattered to fragments. I'm sorry. Please take me back. Please. Come. The devil vanished. Outside, the storm subsided. Crucible rose shaken from the chair. Staggering over to the window, he looked into the fast-clearing evening sky. Then, out of the sunset came a hand and arm of light raised in salute. Crucible smiled. "Don't mention it, sir. It was a pleasure." He closed the window. Now, I'm aware that I'm dancing heavily in a world of Judeo-Christianity right now. With all the talk of heaven and hell and God and the devil, I know in this community we tend to lean away from those teachings for numerous reasons that I think Phil's done a phenomenal job of outlining. But for today, I wanted to provide you with a little view into my own personal beliefs and share with you what I took away from this story. I was raised Methodist. I was extremely indoctrinated into the idea that if I did well in this life, I would be rewarded eternally in heaven. But if I did not do well, I would spend eternity in hell. This was a very powerful part of who I was for a very long time. And in many ways, my core value bank is still laden with fears of a man who has made mistakes along the way and who has gotten away from his own moral code. I still fear that perhaps I'm destined for eternal damnation, although those fundamental beliefs never really sat well for me. If I was to believe in a benevolent creator of the whole universe, how could I accept that the rules of life would be so rigid and inflexible? How could it be possible with such a cryptic handbook that we were provided for living that one mistake would render you tainted and headed for eternal damnation? As my life progressed, I became a parent. One of the times in our lives when we begin to understand some aspect, albeit very, very minute aspect, of what it might be like to be a creator of anything. In being a parent, I found another truth to be self-evident. The fact that there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that any of my children could ever do that would make them unredeemable in my eyes. And to take this a further step, anything that they may do will be a reflection on me. And the ownership of their failures would be mine to deal with. So turning away from them is the last thing I can comprehend. So how then could God, side note, and I wrote this, sorry, since we are UU, read this in any grand creator speech you would like. Yahweh, Gaia, great consciousness, grand architect of the universe is my preferred since I'm a Freemason. And ultimately, what I'm referring to is the force that created life, existence, and the universe that surrounds us all, whatever that force may be for you. I like a 3-letter version because it's really easy and succinct. And I can understand that it's referential in nature, so God's what I went with. So how could God judge us so harshly for making mistakes in our life and turn away from us and send us for eternal damnation? It just didn't track. What is interesting with this story is that we see that hell is nothing more than the home and domain of Nicholas Lucifer, the fallen one, the impetuous child of the Creator who tempted humans and introduced sin into our vocabulary, and was thusly banished to deal with those that sin greatly. The magical twist that Pratchett takes on this is much more aligned with my own beliefs, that while you make mistakes and you may be punished for them, nothing is forever. You can work your way to purgatory and ultimately to the next plane of divine spiritual existence. And if you choose to believe in Christianity, the Creator of all existence gave us global redemption, a blanket forgiveness, a new covenant with all human beings that we will make mistakes but ultimately be forgiven and allowed entrance into heaven. Once again, please don't get our undergarments in a bunch. This could be Valhalla, this could be the next plane of existence, whatever. Reincarnation into a beautiful swan, whatever makes sense for you, just go with it. In Pratchett's story, no one has gone to hell for 2,000 plus years. That was a brilliant take on this from a 13-year-old. And because of this, hell is empty. The only one left is the impetuous child of the Creator who chose to stand against him. And then, in an effort to solve his loneliness and justify that stance, Mr. Lucifer decides to inundate himself with humanity. Again, Pratchett is incredible in the fact that in such a short story, he's able to capture the very essence of true hell. And it's the daily life of human beings. So much so that we're able to drive the devil himself back into the arms of the Creator because of our infinite capacity to create evil, all without any help from any outside force. My purpose for choosing this story today and the moral underpinnings contained within was twofold. I wanted to make this study around 2 thoughts. Thought number 1, be very careful what you wish for. You just might get it. Thought number 2, life will be whatever you make it. Heaven, hell, that choice is yours. That's the fight that started the whole thing. Free will. To the first of these, the careful examples provided within this short story outline the life of Mr. Lucifer and his burden after choosing to stand against his creator. He wished for fame and companionship, a way to escape the loneliness of his decisions. His drive to want for all of this came from unwillingness to change his own mind and ask for forgiveness and move on. I've called him impetuous numerous times. I even prepared our translators with it yesterday because I knew I was going to be referring to it heavily. In this story, it's very clear that all he would have had to do was apologize and ask for forgiveness, and his mistakes would have been cleared, and he would have been accepted home with open arms. But like many human beings, he was prideful. He just had to be right above all else. This then drove him to the second core belief I have about our existence. It is entirely what you make of it. By choosing a prideful, arrogant existence, the devil found himself trying to convince himself he was happy with his decision, and that he could justify it by surrounding himself with human beings, which, for the purposes of my argument, could be called like-minded individuals, co-signers, yes men, friends. Those people who will be around you in your prideful acts, telling you what you're doing is totally correct, and you have every right to do it. Another very fitting word for this in our modern vernacular would be enablers. So this brings me fully around to my important thoughts for the day. As I look at humanity at this time, I see similar dynamics playing out every minute of every day. What I also see is that humans are our own worst enemy, greater than any hell or devil could be. Humans are the source of the greatest evils. We can't blame it on anybody else. The greatest acts of selfishness and contempt towards our brethren. Spend time in Vegas or take a stroll down Bourbon Street and see what the commercialized vice business, the Hades business, looks like. Turn on TV and watch any number of absolutely terrifying examples of hell on earth, the worst possibly being anything with Kardashian in the title. As one of the great prophets of our time, Louis C.K. said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, because it has to be, good for church, humans take so much for granted. The very fact that you are alive and here is amazing, miraculous. That you're able to be here on Earth. There isn't another place within 70 trillion miles in any direction in space that's worth a damn compared to this place. The fact that you get to see all that exists here. The fact that you get to eat. What an amazing experience. One of my favorites. The fact that you get to experience love and make love. Incredible. Yet we miss all of that. We find ways to negatively diminish all of the basic, fundamental miracles that we find every single day just by waking up. By disconnecting ourselves from reality and creating this synthetic man-made version of existence that we live day in and day out. We get to be here on Earth, but rather than commune with her, we strip her of her natural beauties and resources and mine them for profit. We get to eat, but not everyone does. Only those that can afford to get ready access to food, and the best of those examples. This is where I decided to insert money, which is an entire system of which we are slaves to, which is the root of all purest evil. We get to love and make love, and because of how special that is, we make it into a business and we use the power within to market products and goods and services. Even surrounded with beauty and majesty of this world, we spend a large amount of time trying to escape in many number of ways in very creative and unhealthy fashion. Every blessing that we were born with naturally, that every one of us has access to, we have found a way to humanize and corrupt. Even with Crucible, while I want to think of him as a hero that acted as a champion of God to return him back home, I also think, wait a minute. The fifth or sixth time I read it, that wasn't his motivation. His motivation was narcissistic in nature, human in nature. He was worried about the threat to himself that the devil posed. Not in doing good just for the sake of doing good. He profited off this mission and thus was motivated to undertake it. Insert any world war or any, insurgent that we had. Usually we do some good, but only if there's profit. So what am I saying? Humans are pure evil? No. Absolutely not. We are truly miracles incarnate. The very fact that you have comprised of atoms and molecules that for some unknown reason, and I don't care how good you are in science, you still can't explain it to me, that all of these atoms and molecules who are spinning around with space in between decide to take this form and stay in this form. Why do I have 2 arms, fingers, legs? What? It is. It's amazing. The fact that you're provided with all the senses to see, hear, feel, smell, sense, all the things around you. Truly, miracles. Bless you. I've grown far more agnostic in my Middle Ages. I do not have the same arrogance I once had to say with any full determination that I'm right about anything. I've seen humans create heaven out of nothing and hell out of the most abundant things. The worst of these are the hells that we carry inside ourselves that are hidden from everyone else. As I leave you today, I'd like you to leave you with this parting thought. You have the ability to create heaven and hell in this life, for yourself and for those around you. Your children, your spouse, your neighbor, your UUCJ community. You can choose to propagate negativity, contempt, and hate for those you don't agree with. You can go out of your way to cause problems or play politics or seek to gain nothing but power or influence. Or you could seek to be better than that. You could seek to be the miracle you desire. Why? What's in it for you to be nice? What's in it for you to be helpful and kind to others first? I don't know, maybe inner peace and the feelings that you are helping to create heaven here on earth? It's pretty rewarding, I think. Every single day is a new beginning. You can spend your time recounting every wrong someone has done to you and pick up your weapons and go right back to war against them. Or you can rise above. Decide today is the day you're going to be better. You can decide that you're going to learn how to accept others for their flaws and support them, even if they may not support you. That you're going to choose to be kind to everyone, even if they scoff at your efforts. You can choose to be better. You can choose to be kind. If you decide to propagate politics and contempt and chronic resentment of others near you, going out of your way to cause problems for them, I can assure you there's no winning that battle. There is only a very, very special kind of hell you'll be living in, and you'll have only yourself to blame for it. Now is the time you could stop. We're all blessed just merely by the fact that we're here today, right now, on this beautiful, magnificent planet. We can make our community better. We can make our homes better. We can choose to be better. Start today, from this point forward. Stop looking in the past and look forward. Thank you all very much for being here, and be well.